Hi, everybody. This is the D.C. Office of the Tenant Advocates webinar series, OTA, A to Z. I'm your host, Derek McGinty, and today we're talking about the OTA's Emergency Housing Assistance Program. Now, I think we'd all agree that the threat of losing your home, whether from an act of God or something else, is about as frightening as it gets. And that's when our friends over at the OTA can really step up their game to help ease your mind and help keep a roof over your head. My guest today is Tamala Tolton. She's Chief of Staff at OTA. Tamala, thanks so much for coming in.
Yes, thank you.
Good to have you here with us. First of all, we should note OTA's Emergency Housing Assistance Program is unique, right? There's nothing else like it around the country.
Yes, no, there are no other jurisdictions that have an emergency housing assistance program.
So if my house burns down in Cleveland, what happens?
You get 3 days from the American Red Cross and you're on your own.
Wow, that's a tough situation. Give me the story, what happens in D.C.?
In D.C., the American Red Cross will step in and give you up to 3 days in a hotel. And after the 3 days, the OTA jumps in and gives you up to 14 additional days in the hotel.
So how did you get this program started? What convinced you that it was needed?
Well, back in 2008, our director, Chief Tenant Advocate Johanna Shreve, received a call at home in her bed about a fire that displaced several people in the entire city. They didn't know what to do with the tenants. And so she decided at that point that the OTA should try to come up with a program to help tenants, to assist them while they came up with a game plan to find a new place to live. Mm-hmm.
And that was how the Housing Assistance Program was born. So since 2008 or 9, you've had this program. How many families have been helped?
We've helped nearly 1,600 families since the inception of the program.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about what kind of circumstances occur that force people out. We know about fires. What else?
Floods, government closures. We've had situations where storms blew the roofs off of buildings, cars ran into buildings. They all still, government closure is what causes the OTA to jump into action.
Government closure, what's that?
Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs Inspections Division deems a unit uninhabitable, and once they deem a unit uninhabitable, then the tenants can no longer stay, and the OTA will go in with up to 14 days in a hotel. 14
days certainly is a lot more generous than nothing. On the other hand, it doesn't sound like that's enough time for a lot of people to find a place to live.
Many times, 14 days is not enough time for people to find a place to live. It's unfortunate because if they don't have renter's insurance, then they're pretty much, they have to find some. They're bound to using just the 14 days.
So what happens to tenants after the 14 days are up and you're no longer paying for their hotel?
Well, they're on their own. They either go stay with family members or friends, or they will go to DHS to find sheltering.
All right. Tenant, this particular program is a lot more than just the 14 days. You do other things for tenants as well. Talk
yes,
about that.
We do moving and storage when needed, up to 60 days of storage. When tenants are not able to return to their units, we have a contract with a moving and storage company that will go in and move their belongings to a storage facility until they're able to find another place.
Yeah. What about if I need other DC services? Can I go through OTA and your Tenant Emergency Assistance Program?
Well, we link, when we have a building closure, or fire, we usually link the tenants to DHS, Department of Human Services, and strong families in the district, and they're able to provide other services and they're like the tentacles in the city is what I like to call them. They have their arms out into every area, and they are able to help with any other human service needs.
Now, it would seem to me that one of your big problems might be managing expectations. People hear there's an emergency housing assistance program and they think, well, maybe I'll be fine for 2 or 3 months. And you know they're not going to be, at least not on your dime. So how does it work? How do you deal with that?
Absolutely. Well, the best way to manage expectations is to just give them the guidelines up front, to let them know that our program only will give them temporary sheltering for 14 days. And after that, they're on their own. I make sure to reiterate that, again, on the front side. And of course, we have people that come back at the end of their stay and still need assistance. But there's nothing, when that happens, we just direct them to DHS.
Wow. Okay. What about linking up with federal resources?
Well, we don't normally deal with federal government on any situation. People have, of course, housing choice vouchers and other subsidies that are federally funded, but that's still a local government
Sure.
function.
It seems to me that by the time you're getting involved, the horse may already be out of the barn, so to speak, that the house has been destroyed or it's been shut down. Do you counsel people to get renter's insurance before this all goes down?
Well, I don't get the opportunity to, unfortunately. Like you said, once I get it, it's already done.
So, but I know OTA does counsel people to get renter's insurance. I mean, the next time someone hopefully gets another home, they will think about that.
Whenever there is a situation with a closure or a fire, I always suggest, and that's all we can do is suggest, that tenants reach out to a reputable insurance company to see about getting renter's insurance. It's very important.
How much money is spent by the city on this kind of service? Do you know?
Well, we normally spend close to, not quite $1 million a year, but close to $1 million every fiscal year in emergency housing.
It doesn't sound like a lot for a big city like Washington.
Well, Washington is not that large of a city. So in the whole scheme of things, it is a lot. That's a lot of government dollars to spend on just, and I'm only talking, when I say close to $1 million, that's only on the hotel portion of.
Sure. How do you decide what hotels people will stay in for this thing? Do you have contracts? How does that work?
We do not have contracts. We randomly go out to hotels to seek, rooms, especially when we have a large situation. When we have larger fires or closures, we use multiple hotels in the city. So it's all about, especially because the city's so busy, it's all about who has the availability in the city.
Well, I know in the past there have been controversies regarding some of the really inexpensive places out over on New York Avenue and that kind of thing. Are those the places you use now, or where do you go?
Well, we use a lot of different hotels, but we do tend to go to that side of the city because they are more affordable.
Sure.
We try to get them. If it's a situation where all of the tenants are from Northwest and their services are, because we had a recent incident with senior citizens in Northwest, and we didn't want to move them away from where all of their doctor's appointments and services. We were able to find hotels in Northwest. Sometimes those hotels will work with us with their rates to get them to where we can afford. Speaking
of which, I wonder if you've got any personal stories you can tell about people you've helped, when it went well, when it didn't go so well.
Well, I always count them, all the stories, as success stories, because as far as I'm concerned, to move a tenant out of harm's way when they don't have anywhere else to go, even if it's just for 14 days, it's a success. But we have had situations where a building was owned by a landlord or an owner for many, many years, and the landlord passed away. He passed away and left that one particular building and other buildings in his portfolio to his family, who did nothing with the buildings that were already in disrepair. The tenants were not paying any rent, and things were just going downhill quickly. We got a call from the police department because it became a nuisance property, and DCRA came in and shut the building down. There were 16 families displaced at that time. And we were able to place those tenants in a hotel. The government actually stepped in with that situation and made repairs and liened the property for the repairs of that building. And so that was a huge undertaking.
How long did it take to get those people back in their homes?
It took quite some time to get those people back, at least, I think, more than 60 days to get those people back into their units.
So they had to obviously find other places to stay.
Well, they have since then, because they got back into their units and then they were getting moved out of their units. Our legal team helped come up with a way to get the landlord or the owners to pay for alternative housing for the tenants.
Now, is that something you can routinely do, or do landlords tend to say, I can't afford to do that?
Many times the landlords will say they don't have the finances to make that happen. But in this case, it was just a different case. It was a TOPA issue.
Okay. All right, I understand. I was curious about how your job may or may not have changed as the city has become, well, what it's become now, right? It's one of the hottest real estate markets around. Rents are sky high. Buildings are being torn down and changed all the time. How has your job changed, or have you become more busy or less busy or whatever?
Well, the emergency housing program, I don't think has had a direct impact. It hasn't really directly impacted the emergency housing assistance program, or at least I would like to think that that's not the reason for the uptick in emergencies.
So there has been an uptick, you're saying?
Well, since the program began, there has, of course, been more. I don't think that there have been more fires, but there have been more instances where we've assisted.
Why do you think that has been?
I have no idea. Maybe because of the growing funds that we're able to use, or just the people's knowledge about the program. They know to come to us now.
All right. Well, that'll be maybe a subject for another webinar conversation. Pamela Tolton, OTA Chief of Staff, thanks so much for sitting down with us.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time. And if you've got more questions about the OTA, you can visit them online, ota.dc.gov, or go to your telephone, 202-719-6560, Monday through Thursday, 8:45 a.m. to 4:45 p.m., or else in person at 2000 14th Street, Northwest, Suite 300 North, Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Again, we've come to the close of our time today. I'd like to thank our guests for talking about us with the emergency or about the Emergency Housing Assistance Program. I'm Derek McGinty. This has been OTA A to Z.